This is a tutorial for Hamua on how to import a level from source, including models and textures. In this case, I guess Dust 2. I don't play CSGO, but I guess this is the CSGO version of Dust. It's CP Dust 2. It's not DE. I don't know what CP stands for. Maybe we'll find out. But it should be all the same anyway. I've created an empty project called Dust, and I've installed Hamua into it by just making a plugins folder and dragging Hamua in there. I'm going to open that up. The order that we need to do this in is we first need to import all the textures, then all the models, and then the map. First I need to get my textures and models out of CSGO. So in your CSGO folder, Counter-Strike Global Offensive CSGO, you should have a bunch of VPKs. The only one of which you're concerned with is Paco1_dir, which includes all the others. And we've got a materials folder, which is textures and VMT files in folders, and models, which is all the models. Includes characters and stuff as well, but you're not going to need those. And I'm just going to make a folder here, although it doesn't matter where you do it. Source stuff, and I'm going to extract those materials and models into there. So that took a while, but we have all our materials now that we're going to need for this CS stuff. I should remind you guys, although it should be obvious, you can't use any of this stuff in a commercial game. You probably can't even legally use this stuff in a free game. This is just for funsies. Almost done. Alright, that was just the materials. Now we need to do the same thing with the models. So right click, extract, wait a million years again. So while you obviously can't use any of this stuff in a commercial game, if you made something like, I don't know, Insurgency or Neo Tokyo that seems to use pretty much all original content, you could totally just port that to UE4 and use that. So now I've copied all of my materials and models out of CSGO into VTF and VMT files for the materials and just various garbage for the models. I have to import those into UE4. We'll go straight into Texture, because the order we have to do this in is textures, then props, then the map. So this has functionality to export UE4 textures as well if you want to use them in Hammer, if you're doing level design in Hammer, which I do. But what we're interested in right now is the import option. So this is going to import VTFs and VMTs from source and make instanced UE4 materials out of them. But to do that we need a base material to work off of. So let's make a new material. And this just needs to handle basic functionality right now, although you could extend it to handle certain other functionality that a VMT lets you do. So let's create a texture parameter. Hold T, click to create a texture sample, then go convert to parameter. We'll put a name here like diffuse. We make another new texture parameter for the normal map. Call it normal. I think that'll probably do for now, but you can do more elaborate things with the base material to get a better import of your source materials. And we'll open up Hamua again and go to Texture. Okay, so this is the base material that we want. The base parameter is called diffuse, the normal parameter is called normal. It is filled that incorrectly. We need a decal material for when we want to import decals, so I'll just duplicate the existing material and call it Hamua decal map. And all I'm going to change in there is I'm going to switch it to use deferred decal. And the blend mode translucent. And in source, I'm not sure about CSGO, but usually the opacity mask will be in the alpha channel. So I'll just hook that up. It looks kind of weird now, but it's a decal material, so now we've got our base materials. We'll do the same thing here, Hamua decal map, diffuse. And we'll go import to, and we'll just type CSGO in here. And we'll leave it on both here. And we'll go choose source directory and browse to where we had our source stuff folder. And select our materials folder. Hit import. So a million years later when that's done, you'll probably get this message. Do you want to try creating materials for imported textures that might not have been used? Just say no. We don't need that. Done. So there's a pretty good chance that the materials are not going to show up yet, or all of them anyhow. You have to restart the editor. This is due to some kind of memory management issue that UE4 has, apparently. And you should find that you've got a whole bunch of CSGO materials. Let's hit up D Chateau and have a look at some stuff. So these are all instanced materials, material instances. So there's only one actual material that needs compiling. Some of these have an issue in that they are materials that in source didn't have a normal map for them, so they've fallen back on using my base materials default normal map. So what you'll want to do is use just a flat normal map on your base material so that if they don't override it in the material instance, everything doesn't come up looking ridiculous. So now that we've got all the materials imported and textures, we need to import the models. We go to Hamua, go to Propua, import to, we will fill in a second. We go source stuff, models. In import to, we'll type CSGO models, press enter, and hit get list of items. Get another disclaimer that you obviously can't use any of these in your games. So this will bring up every mesh that it's found. That's a pretty long list. We can select all, which will tick every box, and import. We could also put in rotation offsets, which can be good for various reasons, and then re-import in case any of them have issues. So we'll hit import. It's going through the master material list that it made when we imported textures and saying, okay, for all the textures referenced by these meshes, what is the material instance that we created when we imported? Now we get another progress bar that's probably going to take another 1,000,000 years. If it takes 2,000,000 years, it might have crashed, but if it only is 1,000,000, stick with it. Okay, so that's done, clocking in at 1.234 million years. And we'll have a look in this new folder, models, chicken. Alright, looks like we don't even have to restart the editor, we've got all the meshes right here. CS got weird. I see. So now that we've got all the meshes and materials in, we can finally import the map. So we'll go new level, empty level. We'll go Hamua, choose file. I'm going to choose CP Dust2 that's in a folder called SDK content in CSGO. So hopefully that is a workable dust. And what we see here is a list of every material used in the map. Some of these we want to tick ND on, meaning no draw, which means we want to treat that face as if it was a no draw face, which in this context means something slightly different than it does in source. In source, if you texture something with no draw, it's still solid, but here it is as though the face never existed. So we want to do that. It's already ticked by default for certain things, but we want to tick it for things like player clip, tools skybox, because we don't have a concept of a skybox in UE4, block line of sight, anything that's a tool or a visibility helper like skip and hint brushes. You can type something like tools up here and find material, and it'll help you out a bit, highlighting the ones that fit that. So you can easily just tick tools block light. That should be it. Now we'll hit go, and we're finally actually importing the map. If it's a pretty big map, this is going to take a while, but not as long as it took to import the textures of the models. And when that finishes, you'll see something like this. Switch to unlit mode, and you'll see that we pretty much have dust here, although there are some issues. Everywhere that we see a red question mark like this means that it's a missing prop mesh. So we imported a bunch of models, but there are also a bunch that we didn't import, and so they were missing when we imported the map. In CSGO's case, this is probably because of the kind of complicated way that source manages assets. So these are probably meshes from Half-Life 2 or shared source files, so you'll just want to make sure that you also extract the materials and models from any shared VPK or GCF that you have lying around, source shared materials, source shared whatever. Another thing that we are missing here is the translucency hasn't come through on the textures, so that's because we're using a really simple base material. We could have supported that when we made our material, and I have another video somewhere laying around that explains better how to do that. Most of what we set out to do though we've done, but let's pretty up a bit by just dragging in some default Unreal classes that are gonna make this a little prettier. We'll type sky up here and bring in a sky sphere. we'll point that sky sphere to the directional light that imported, the light environment, as you would call it if you're on source. We'll check that light out and see if it's ridiculously bright. It is. So we'll switch that to like the default, which is 10. It's kind of a weird greenish light, but I haven't played Dust on CSGO, so maybe that's how it's supposed to be. We have completely black shadows, and that would be fixed if we built lighting because of bounce light. But I can't be bothered building lighting right now, so I'm just going to add a skylight, which will capture the sky and sort of apply that to the indirect lighting. And I'm just going to fool around with this a little bit and try and make it less ugly without building lighting because I don't want to. We're now in the kind of post-tutorial realm where I'm just screwing around. There you kind of have it. Got a bunch of CSGO models and a map all imported into UE4. Haven't bothered with lighting yet, but we could definitely make this pretty. Hope this helps. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions, and, you know, check nobody else has already asked those questions before you ask them. One thing I forgot to do when I imported this map is set the scale. So there are a lot of options like that in the Configure tab, which you can use to avoid something like this happening when you're a massive giant. You can't fit through any of the gaps. Although it's pretty fun like this. Cool.